the greater you can make a connection on a human level with the client you are trying to serve, the more you will understand the pressures they're under, the more you will understand the way they interpret the direction they've gotten, the better you will be able to help them achieve their goals in the most human way. It was not my job to persuade them to do something they didn't want to do or that would be bad for them. That would ruin a relationship that was otherwise very profitable. You became very much like a kind of therapist in a way, trying desperately to persuade them you're trying to help them. This created an environment where they could be sincere with you. They would be able to say, Neal, this isn't my belief. I agree with you, but you have to understand, I cannot boil the ocean here. I've got to do what they tell me to do in this case in order to achieve a larger agenda. I understand. I'm not going to be the worst part of your day. I'm going to be the best part of your day. I'm going to try and help you with the least amount of friction. We'll figure it out together.
Welcome to the Haggai podcast. Buckle up. This episode is brought to you by Cards Biz, a business card too good to give away. This episode is brought to you by Better Weight for Life, transformational weight loss aid, led by U.S. board-certified physicians, providing access to GLP-1 medications like Wegovy and Zepbound that are proven to help you lose weight and keep it off.
Hello, Neal. Hello.
Hi there.
So, full disclosure, and maybe even a bit of a stamp of why I'm so excited about this conversation. I am a paying customer of Neal, of his course, and I cannot even pretend to be as good as a storyteller as he is, but it made me a little more conscious on how I frame stories and maybe slightly better. But all credit goes to him, and all fault is 100% mine for not being a good enough student. But for sure. This is to say, I don't think I paid for a lot of courses in my life, but Neal's course is definitely one of them. And if you want to stop right now and go to storyfire.net, right? Storyfire.net.
That's right.
Right now, do the course and then come back to this podcast. I'm totally okay with that.
Thank you for that plug, Haggai. That was very nice of you. And I'm thrilled that you have taken the course, because I'm noticing right away you have a knack already. You can, some people are comfortable being themselves. This is always the greatest source of credibility, enjoyment, friendship, making a human connection. In the age of AI, human connection becomes the premium. That's the premium service. That's the premium outcome. And I absolutely love your energy, and it reeks of sincerity, which is a very nice quality.
Thank you very much. And as a good friend of mine once said, flattery would get. So Neal, it's like I'm dying to ask a bunch of questions, but for people who don't know you, if you're forced into an elevator and people say, like, who the hell are you? Like, what do you say?
Well, I spent 35 years in advertising and marketing, and the stock in trade on the creative side of the advertising business, which is I was a copywriter originally, is to try to persuade people to look at your product or your service a certain way. And the hope is that you have made a connection with somebody to make them understand or help them picture the product in their lives in a way that will benefit them. And what frequently happens, and the art form that I practiced, was to try as much as possible to convince clients to be human. So when you're asking me to introduce myself to the people in your audience or on an elevator, it would be, I spent an entire career trying to help people put their best foot forward when they are in business, making presentations or having conversations or sales calls. You can imagine how important it would be for somebody like a CEO on an earnings call, or a young entrepreneur who's going to be facing a venture capital board. How do they present themselves? And the reason I have any expertise in that is, before you can get a commercial made, you have to persuade some very skeptical, very jaded people that this is a good idea. And you're doing it with nothing more than gas, nothing more than the air. You have to give them a sufficiently accurate picture of what it is that you intend to produce and what the results are likely to be. And after literally thousands of presentations like that, I gathered a few tips and tricks and some fundamentals that I think we can talk about today that may seem obvious, and yet at the same time, people don't practice them because they think their programming has somehow taken the humanity out of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's very true. But it's the same thing about common sense, I would say. And
Yeah.
and I'm not taking myself out of it. Like common sense is not about common, right? Being human in the world where our main interaction, even this podcast, right? Like
Yeah.
we have to bridge this two-dimensional gap. It's like it has made us. It has. I don't say it made us. It has made something that might have been a little more natural. Maybe I'm not sure. Maybe you have a different view on that. A little harder, but we actually have to make a conscious effort on
Yes.
that.
Very well put. Yeah.
So I would say it's like, so why marketing for you? Maybe we go a little, we'll go a little back. Like, why this subject matter of all the possible subject matters?
Well, let's see. It's funny because until you asked me that question just now, I'd never really thought about it at any great length. I'll put it this way. I grew up wanting to be a creative person. Originally, I wanted to be a cartoonist. I still doodle constantly at my desk. And what advertising represented, marketing represented, a kind of show business light. It was a way of not having to starve while you get to practice the creative arts, writing as a profession and art and music. When you're putting together a commercial, it's very much like a tiny little movie. And the idea was, wow, we get to interact with all these professional musicians and film editors and directors. And that just really appealed to me.
And like, but what I'm a little struggling with, because your background is very corporate. And I always had the sense, like Toyota's, Sochi and Sochi, right? Like, it's like I got always the sense as somebody who also used to sell to Fortune 50 and corporates and stuff like that, but it's in many ways very constrained. And
Yes.
and at least from all my interactions with you and your content, it's very, like you said, human, which for me is almost anti-Fortune 50, Fortune 500. So how did that work? Like, did you suffer the trials and tribulation of that friction, or
Yes.
I don't know, why did you manage to kind of walk around that?
That is, oh my God, these are absolutely great questions. Yes. So there is automatic friction because what's happening in any corporate environment is that it is hierarchical. And so as you descend from the very top of the C-suite down into the various middle management layers where they're making decisions that affected my life, they are not operating off of their own human instincts. What they're doing is they're towing the line. They're trying to live up to the aspirations and the direction that they've been given. And just like a game of telephone, where what started out to be the message after 3 or 4 translations is nowhere near what the original intention was. This was often the case in any corporate environment. And we realized, all of my colleagues and I realized, that the greater you can make a connection on a human level with the client you are trying to serve, the more you will understand the pressures they're under, the more you will understand the way they interpret the direction they've gotten, and the better you will be able to help them achieve their goals in the most human way. It was not my job to persuade them to do something they didn't want to do or that would be bad for them. That would ruin a relationship that was otherwise very profitable. So you became very much like a kind of therapist in a way. You were trying...
In what way?
Trying desperately to persuade them you're trying to help them. And this created an environment where they could be sincere with you. And then when they would be able to say, Neal, this isn't my belief. I agree with you, but you have to understand, I cannot boil the ocean here. I've got to do what they tell me to do in this case in order to achieve a larger agenda. I'm like, I'm with you, Ron. I understand. I'm not going to be the worst part of your day. I'm going to be the best part of your day. I'm going to try and help you with the least amount of friction. We'll figure it out together, how we can maneuver things into a better place. And often the better place was this. Frequently, corporate clients, it's the thing that makes them corporate, believe that the way that you persuade people is through bullet points, through rational, objective facts and or characteristics of your product. Never mind that the most successful brands on earth, say Nike, as an example, or Apple, they hardly ever talk about the facts of their product. It's all based on the emotional feeling that you get by waving their logo in front of people as a flag. But let's return to the corporate orientation. It was always, if we've got 30 seconds to do a commercial, I want every second of that commercial to be talking about some advantage of ours. I want it packed from start to finish with facts. I understand the impulse. I do. They want to maximize and optimize what they're able to get across for their money, not realizing that this is not how human beings are persuaded. Human beings, we haven't changed as a species for thousands of years. And even though we think that because we've got ChatGPT and satellites and microwave ovens and algorithms, even though space travel is the age we live in, we didn't build the rockets. We have no idea how they work. If you transported you and I back to when we had to kill mammoths with sharp sticks, we would not last a day with our colleagues.
No.
So, but we think we're so much smarter than they are because we're surrounded by technologies that we're taking credit for things we didn't create. I don't know anybody who knows how to build a smartphone. So what does this mean? It means that the way we take in information, the way we learn, the way we express togetherness and so forth, these are very, very old technologies, and they haven't changed for thousands of years. So the smart thing to do is go, well, what was persuasive way back when? The default operating system for human beings is sitting around a campfire and eating together and talking with one another and gossiping and trying to explain what a volcano is when you're just a flea-bitten, fur-wearing ignoramus.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure, what do the seasons mean? Why do people die? And so if you acknowledge that we haven't changed as a species, then you start to be able to persuade a corporate employee, a corporate officer. Let's go back to basics here. Let's talk about the fact that we're all human beings and that on every side of a transaction, your side and their side, it's one human being talking to another. And instead of trying to overload them with information that they have no memory for, no capacity to remember, how about this instead? How about you write them a love letter? How about you write a love letter to your customers to tell them how much you appreciate them?
And is that something you've actually did?
Yes.
Explain. What's a corporate love letter? Because it's something that doesn't get you in trouble in HR and doesn't get you a sexual assault.
Well, I'll use an example from Toyota. Yeah. So this would be Toyota's corporate love letter to its customers. Yeah. So I had a junior creative team who was listening to some, they were doing focus groups. Now, focus groups, generally speaking, are fairly useless, except if you can get a verbatim like this, just a little quote, a little snippet. I had two female, there was a copywriter and an art director, and they were watching these people were going to advertise the Toyota Sienna, which is a minivan. So there was a group of women in a focus group. And one of the women just happened to make the chance remark, sometimes I feel like I'm carrying the weight of my whole family. Armed with nothing but that remark, the two came back with the sweetest, most beautiful advertisement for a Toyota Sienna, in which what happens is a Sienna pulls up outside a house in a suburban neighborhood at night. Everybody in the vehicle is asleep except for the woman who is driving, the mom. She gets out of the car and puts all the doors up. It's a kind of an automatic thing. All the doors go up. So first she gets her little baby, her little infant out of the car seat, and she takes him up to bed. And the house sits on a piece of property where there are stairs going up to the front door. And you get the idea that she's going to have to carry this child all the way up into the bedroom. Then she comes back for the toddler. And now she carries him up the stairs. And now she comes back and she realizes her husband is 280 pounds. And now she simply lifts him up and carries him up to bed. Of course, it's a special effect. We had him hooked to a crane. This was a big dude. We had him.
Yeah, but the point is
right. And she simply carries him up the stairs to bed. And then when she gets to the top of the stairs and she's looking back at the vehicle, she pulls out her little key fob and she closes all the doors automatically. And the announcer says, just like this, push button automatic doors on the new Toyota Sienna.
Yeah.
And that's the
one less thing to worry about, right?
Well, you're a natural because it took me quite a while to get to that phrase, which was instrumental in selling it. But why they bought it, in spite of the fact that they wanted to load the commercial with facts, was because they knew immediately what we meant when we said, we want to write a love letter to your customers. All those moms they're going to know what we're saying, even as we're smiling and laughing. But they're going to realize, they get it. They get it. They know what it's like to be me. And with that, what happens is the value of the vehicle rises quite a bit because we're not negotiating about price right now. We're talking about somebody who sees you and likes you and wants to help you. And when love is involved, money is no object. So that's an example of the sort of, that's a story that gets told, not an ad trying to interrupt your day. It's a mini movie.
It's interesting. And I tell you, the association that came in my head as you were saying about the prices especially if I go back to the 80s and early 90s in the computer wars, right? Like the PC was a list of components.
Yeah, right.
Right. And then you break down and literally it was also priced based on like
Yes,
the components.
very
And
much.
then you had Apple, right? And then you had Apple, right? It's like those things. But I want to push you a bit because of it. Because
Good.
I push you a bit of success because I want to get a little about your personal hero journey. I'm assuming, Neal that's talking to me now with such confidence and clarity on his philosophy and vision wasn't fully baked. So why
Yes.
don't you kind of walk us back about your, I call it a hero's journey just because we're talking about stories. Like how did this evolve? Like how does this a viewpoint evolve that we're talking about love
Yeah.
when talking to corporate?
All right. Well, so as I say, I started out I was actually an account executive in an advertising agency at Dancer Fitzgerald Sample before they became such and such.
Yeah.
And as an account executive, it was my job to try to serve the customer, the client, achieve their objectives and so forth. And I was a terrible account executive because I didn't really understand the art and magic of communicating and persuading people. I didn't understand how much humanity was involved in it when you do it right. I was just trying to drive things through the pipeline. And for my sins, I was punished, which is eventually being a creative person. I wanted to go to the creative side of the business. So I got onto the creative side. And then I realized all of the awful, terrible things I didn't understand and how I had been swimming against the tide and how I had been fighting my colleagues when I should have been supporting them. So my journey began with the idea that I was chastened and embarrassed by what a terrible account executive
Do you
was.
remember something specifically you were embarrassed about?
I remember saying to a creative, "Is this the best you can do?" And I said it dripping with sarcasm, just,
Not an inspirational thing, but more like
wow, right? How insulting and condescending such a thing was. And because I don't know the struggles that they're under, I had no idea that you had to get 23 people to say yes before an ad would get made. And that at every step, you can get 17 people in and then still lose. Do you know how soul destroying that is to get so close and then be defeated over and over? It's like losing in the playoffs and you didn't make it to the championship. So there I am being this condescending little douche talking to somebody who'd been doing it for 15 years and saying something so stupid. And years later, I heard something quite similar in return. And instead of getting upset, I was actually glad that finally karma had caught up to me and I can relax now. Do you know what I mean?
I paid it. I got paid.
Right.
I got paid back. Yes.
Right. I think I literally broke out laughing when I got that remark. Okay, but back to the journey.
Yeah.
So as a copywriter, I was definitely not the most talented of the writers. And I saw that early. But one day what happened was I noticed that there was a brilliant idea that was described, but it was described badly. But I saw how brilliant it was. And the creative team that presented it didn't realize they'd done it badly. They didn't. And so it didn't get accepted. And from that, I thought it really makes a difference how you describe these things. People cannot assume they're going to see the brilliance of the idea.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure you have to see on their face the light that goes on.
Yeah.
So what I was able to do was from that, I said, from now on, I am going to bring this thing to life. This is a performance. When they turn to you and they want to hear your ideas, it's showtime.
Do you remember what it was?
I do remember that I read a book on making presentations for business. I wish I could remember what it was. I mean, I'd read Dale Carnegie, and Dale Carnegie is like fundamental. But I remember in the book they said, if it's your room, that is, if you control the room that they're hearing it in, you can dress that room with visuals. You can make it smell like something. You can put a placemat in front of them with little things that will reinforce your idea. You can have a soundtrack when they walk. And I thought, it's a play. It's a Broadway play. So very early in my own group, we started doing all of these things. And here's what happened. Even when they didn't necessarily think your idea was the best idea, they wanted it to be. And you got the home court advantage anytime you really put on a show. And we
because of the show, or because people appreciate the effort?
They appreciated the effort.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit of the first, but you've nailed it. Exactly. They said, oh, how you do anything is how you do everything. They really made an effort to bring this thing to life. Now, let's take a step back, and you're in their shoes, and they're thinking, if we did produce this, they would not miss a trick. They would be the kings of the details. And I'll give you a great example of the sort of detail we used to go to. One time we had done a campaign on behalf of the New York Toyota dealers. And it was a silly little thing that they'd asked me to do a Columbus Day sales event. But unfortunately, we had very little time and we had almost no money. And the idea that I presented was to use a G.I. Joe doll that we had dressed like Christopher Columbus. And he had this very sort of New York, garment district. Hi, I'm Christopher Columbus. Action figure. Yeah, but I'll tell you what the action is this weekend. It's such a Toyota dealer. Ka-chow! And it was this silly, just the purpose of it was to be so disruptive that it would punch above its weight, that it would get more attention than we'd paid. Yeah. Because it would be the sort of thing that if somebody saw it twice, they'd be calling Madge in from the kitchen, say, I want you to see this crazy thing, right? That sort of thing. Well, it accomplished its goals, but the Toyota dealers were mortified because of the calls they would get. And their children would say, that is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. I can't believe you approved that. So I really got called on the carpet for that. And I got beaten up pretty bad. What I didn't want to...
Well, if it today was TikTok, if it was TikTok today.
It would be brilliant.
I just thought about that. I thought that's like, you literally can do this today on TikTok on like 10th of a budget. Yeah. You could literally do that. Like, exactly. Like, that's an advertisement just as you do that. Like,
it totally is. So we were ahead of our time. But I remember that my response was kind of funny, which was that they said, this thing's a piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. And my response was, how did you do this weekend? How were sales? And they killed it. And literally the comment I got from the president of the dealer association was, that's beside the point. And I go, is it though? Is it beside the okay.
Is it now?
Yeah, right.
Really? Is it?
Right. But I did not want to leave them with a bad taste in their mouth. I did not want them. What I wanted to do was I wanted to accept my beating with a kind of grace, with a sort of sense of humor. Like, you're not wrong, fellas. It was crappy, but I had constraints. So what I wound up doing was they told me in no uncertain terms, I never want to see a freaking doll or puppet in any further ideas. So I shot a video of me having a conversation with the puppet about how it was fired. You're fired. Now, meanwhile, the puppet would not accept it. It would not accept it. And he keeps arguing, how did they do? How were sales?
Do you have it anywhere? Do you have it anywhere?
I've got it somewhere.
If you have it, I would love if you can send it and we'll clip it. If that's possible. We'll clip it.
It's pretty silly. But anyway, at one point in this thing, I finally persuade the doll that he's fired. And he says, okay, no hard feelings. By the way, when is our next meeting? When's the next meeting you're having? Check the calendar, he says. So I lean up to the calendar to check the date, and you see his little hand go to my zipper and zip my pants down. Okay. So then he goes, have a good meeting. Okay. Now, I'm watching the video with the dealers. I'm saying Christopher Columbus, whom we fired, had one last message he wanted to give you. I haven't seen it yet, so let's play it. So we play it, and then the zipper goes down, and all of a sudden I look down and my zipper's down in the meeting.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that little bastard. Okay. Huge laughs in the room. Now, what happened in that moment is that they go, wow, this guy took his lumps and he doesn't feel bad about it. And he's just having a good time. This meeting was off the chain. Okay. It was, they wanted so badly to buy whatever we were there to sell.
Yeah.
Because they were human beings. In that moment, they're not corporate employees and they're not businessmen. They're human beings. And they see that this guy is basically fearless in front of us. Yeah. And if you've ever had meetings with salespeople, like legit, really good salespeople, they love to be sold. They're hoping you're good. Yeah. And they respect it. They respect the shit out of it when you are fearless because they know how hard that is. So that to me is a really good example of a kind of love letter of sorts to the clients. Which is,
if I had my hat on, I would take it off right now. I have to say, it's like this. So it's like, I heard two meta messages here. Like you have, I heard the obvious ones, right? I heard the other ones you mentioned. It's like, be fearless, the love letter, like pushing the envelope, right? And all that. But it's like, but the meta messages I heard, the willingness to laugh at yourself. And the complexity of selling to people that then So selling to the client and also selling to their client at the same time.
Yes, right, exactly. You've nailed it.
Exactly.
It's a very delicate tightrope walk where you're trying desperately to actually speak to the end user, but
Yeah.
you have to do so under conditions where the person who's doing the advertising, the one who's going to be responsible for it and who will be blamed or praised for it, they have to agree that this is what they want.
Yeah.
Because imagine somebody dressing you like you're going to go have a big meeting and you're letting somebody else pick out the wardrobe for you. This is the position a client is in. Somebody else is going to dress them up. And brother, you know how bad that can go. Just look at the red carpet outfits that some people wear at like big events, right? You're going, who put them in that? So yes, the meta message definitely is there's a tightrope where you're trying to say things to the end user, but you're doing so on behalf of somebody else. It's like speech writing. You've got to know the character of the person you're writing for and be true to their brands. But then again, this is the lesson, which is you've got to love them. You have to love your clients in such a way that you wouldn't dream of embarrassing them, or you would never think of your own priorities first. And I've seen a lot of that in advertising.
So maybe it's actually a good segue so people can a bit understand your philosophy. So you have a lot of tips, you have a lot of techniques, you have a lot of things, and you sell a course and you teach it and you give speeches and all things. But I'm wondering, what is at its core your philosophy or your belief system? So I heard love the customer, right? I heard love coming a lot of time, but is it just love? Are there other core belief systems that you think are very important for somebody who's in business, right?
Yes,
in business in general?
Yeah.
We must attend.
I've got a bunch, but I'll go right to the most fundamental that I think will best serve your listeners. Life gets so much easier when people like you. I want you to imagine you're in an airport having difficulty with your ticket, but the gate agent, they really like you. They want to help you. You know what's just happened? You have brought to bear all of their expertise and all of the flexibility and empowerment they have to help you out. Or you can be a disagreeable douchebag, and now they're going to take all of their institutional knowledge and turn it against you. Or you imagine you're in a restaurant and you are really quite affectionate with the waiter. You want to take advantage of their expertise. You know what makes a waiter feel really good? Not that you're sweet to them, it's that you respect their talent. Like when you really admire when a server, my wife is so good at this. She will say to a server, when we came in here, we were not in a very good mood, and something about you has really made us warm up. That is maybe one of the sweetest things you could say to somebody, is that they have transformed your day. And that when you behave like that in the world, and this is why I was doing it with my clients, is then in exchange, they love you in return. And in doing so, you've become teammates now. You're on the same side. You're going to make more progress that way. So that's one philosophy, is life gets easier when people like you. But I'll give you another one. It's shocking, the return on investment of kindness. And you and I both, from our own life experience, I'll bet you, if you sat down with a notepad, it wouldn't take you very long to do 10 examples of how when you were nice to somebody or you were kind to them, whether it's a protege or a mentor, whether it is a client or one of the people that serves you, when you go out of your way to be good to them, to offer them something in no expectation of reciprocity, the return turns out to be dramatic. I'll tell you the story that I love to tell, because it's the origin story of why I always carry around a pocket full of these now, these little troll dolls. So I was at LAX with my friend Marcus. We were going off to Boston or Chicago or something, and we were flying United. Now, United's got a hub in LA, but it's got another hub, and its main hub is in Chicago. And they were having a weather event in Chicago. And what was happening was because of this, there were all kinds of canceled flights and delayed flights coming into LA. It was really creating havoc for the LA crews of United. Well, the line where you go to check your bags was a simmering zoo. And people were they couldn't understand why, with us brilliant weather outside in Los Angeles, why are we having all of these delayed flights because of snow? So people they're taking it out on the two gals behind the counter. And as if they have some kind of switch they can throw, and then everything gets bright and sunny and we're on our way again. And one couple in particular, the ones in front of us when we were checking our bags, they were just a couple of real swamp donkeys, and they were just awful to this woman behind the counter. And you could see in her eyes, she had the 10,000-yard stare. She was just finished with the human race. Well, we get up there, and before the woman can say anything to us, and before I can speak, Marcus, who's used to be an improv actor, he goes to the woman, "Man, those two are in big trouble." And she goes, "What?" And he pulls out the doll and he goes, "Bjorky saw the whole thing, and all the trolls know each other, and he's going to tell them what happened, and they will have their revenge. And by the way, if you feed him before the sun goes down, it will be double bad." So then he pulls out a package of M&Ms and he says, "These are his favorite." And he hands this woman the troll doll and the M&Ms. Now, I want you to imagine right now how much she's thinking about the couple that just left. She's not thinking about them at all. They are
No.
gone from her memory. All she's
Yeah.
thinking about is the lunatic, playful idiot in front of her going, and she's thinking, "What?" Now, meanwhile, he said, if you feed him before the sun goes down, right? But the partner over here, about 5 feet away, she's overheard all of this. And she goes, "Can we feed him now?" Okay. So you know that what is happening for the rest of the afternoon, for whenever they're at the gate, you know that what's happening is every time they get a tool coming up and being mean to them, they're just pulling out another M&M and sticking in front of
Lemon feeding
Bjarke. So in other words, what's happened is Marcus has completely transformed their experience because he's communicated, not everybody's an ass. And there are those of us who respect what you do and who want to improve your day. Now, I'm putting this in the context of the ROI of kindness because what happened then is I did not realize that the two women behind the counter taking your bags, you see them again because then you meet them at the gate. They're the gate agents when you go up there. Now they know who everybody is. And so Marcus gets an upgrade to first class. Mysteriously. I didn't, but he did. And I was tickled because I thought, you know what, Marcus, you earned that, bro.
You earned that.
And it was a really, really good example of almost everybody you meet has some kind of influence. They can elastically decide whether to help you or hurt you. And he hadn't done it for the upgrade. And that was all the more reason why it was delightful to me. But that is a really good example of this is my personal core philosophy is I try not to go through life looking for trouble. On the contrary, I'm looking for somebody who isn't having a good day with a pocket full of these in the hope that I can help them through it. And you know what? Just knowing that I've done that, I don't need a reward. I really don't because
But you feel good about yourself. No, don't you feel like there is an element of that, right? It's like, even if it's a story you tell yourself.
yes,
I'm not saying that
we've nailed it. That's it.
I'm not saying it's like, it's not a bad thing, right?
No, it's
not
the
a bad
story.
thing.
It's the story I'm telling myself about myself. The story I'm telling myself is you're the kind of person who improves everybody else's day. And this was something that I always used to preach to my own advertising people, which is the creative crews. Your meeting has to be the best part of their day because I want you to be famous in their building. For if you have a meeting with Karen, it's going to be off the chain. It's going to be fantastic. They're going to be inviting other people in to see the meeting. And what happens is then they want so much to approve whatever you've brought or recommended.
Yeah.
And you won't always win. But what you will do is when they like you, if you lose one, they'll count that on the tally thinking, we owe them one.
And it goes back and again, I strongly agree with you. I don't know what other people would say about how I conduct myself, but I do greatly believe in self-interested karma in the sense that if we think about it, it's people in business and in life, mind you, we play in an infinite game, right? It's not a boxing match that somebody needs to one person gets knocked out. It's not a winner takes all. It's also not a thing. It's like the person you're meeting today, you're going to meet again 10 years from now. And I know it's so hard to imagine when you're 18, 20 or whatever, when you're just starting out, but like life and your career is so long. And the people you meet today, you'll meet again and again and again.
Yes, you do.
Down the stream. So it's like, even from pure self-interest, like, don't be an asshole.
Even if you were a psychopath, even if you were a complete psychopath, it would still be in your interest to walk through the world doing the things good people do.
Yeah.
It will be more profitable to you. I want to talk about what you were saying about how you would be shocked at how many times you meet these people again down the road. And in little ways, for example, it doesn't have to be that they're your new boss at the new job or that you're their boss. It doesn't have to be that overt. It can be the kind of offhand remark at a dinner that you never attended, where somebody dropped your name and the other person said, I love that guy. That guy, have you ever been to one of his meetings? No? Brother, are you in for a treat? And I guarantee you that room is going to smell good when you walk in. So your resonating waves of reputation have a way of getting out there in the world. And then, there is the odd occasion where you're interviewing for a job and it turns out that the vice president is an ex-client and they loved you. That turns out to be why your resume was at the top of the list. But let's go back to why storytelling is an important part of this thing. Because what stories do is it establishes by what you choose to tell a story about, it communicates what your priorities are and who you really are as a person. And when you tell upbeat, positive stories about experiences that you've had that formed you or the people who inspired you, what happens is people understand they chose to tell me something positive that has left me feeling good. You know how people are. They don't necessarily understand why they make the decisions they make. And they don't even know what they've decided, but they feel the life experience. And when you bring them positive stories, when you walk into the room and you say, we're here to talk about this new software, about whether or not to adopt this SaaS product into our thing. And you know what happened to me this morning? I was looking through my other subscriptions and boom, 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 boom. And then their story is very positive about how they arrived at which were the best choices. And if it had a little funny ending or it had a touching ending, then what happens is everybody in that room that just listened to that story understands the criteria of how you judge whether or not something should be adopted. It contextualizes not just the objective criterion, but the life experience that leads them to believe, your credibility is based on the fact this was a human experience. And as I recall it, it contextualizes things. You know how you were saying before that not only had I made a couple of points, on prima facie, but you said there were meta messages.
Yes.
That's part of the way everybody absorbs information is they absorb it on a rational level, but they absorb it on an emotional level. And telling stories about context and about how you reach decisions, about the kind of people you want to hang out with, it sends meta messages about whether you can be trusted. And again, life gets so much easier when people like you.
So let me push you on that. Somebody's listening to this and said that makes perfect sense. But as a mortal, as one of a common stock, somebody who cannot play on the edge of insanity and have talking dolls and give them like things like that, because that's a talent by itself, right? Because like that's on the level like call somebody, do you have this person in life, or is this charming and funny? But it's a skill set. So let's say if I'm just a beginner and I'm worried about my payroll and I'm worried about my clients, I'm worried about the development cycle, whatever that is, how do I take this principles and I even just attempt to implement in my day-to-day?
So I'll give you two examples of how somebody might do that. The no decision is made without an environment in which it's made. There's context is always, it's like timing. Sometimes ideas can be ahead of their schedule and so on. So I remember there was a CFO who was she was a woman and she had a Ukrainian accent. It was quite thick. And she was very self-conscious about it because she was having to deal with Canadian clients. And she came to me because she wanted to get rid of her accent. And I said, don't you dare. It's one of the coolest things about you. Let me describe to you how I see you. I see you with that accent as somebody who has withstood much bigger dangers than a bad quarter. I see you and your life experience as you're this sort of woman who could lead a shipyard strike on the Black Sea. And this is what this accent communicates to me is that I'll bet you play chess very well. I don't want you to retreat from that accent. What I want you to do instead is I want you to embrace that your audience is probably going to have a reaction very similar to me. Most Canadians don't speak Ukrainian or Russian. So you've already got that on them, right? You're multilingual. And don't bust my balls about how my accent. You don't speak Ukrainian, okay? So I'm doing you a favor. But at the same time, I want you to embrace this no-nonsense character that you seem to display. You are no nonsense. And instead of going in there and doing some funny story or anything like that, what I want you to do is pepper your argument with historical references. I want you to appear to be, I want you to walk in there, and even though you're all of 33 years old, I want you to be able to talk about something that happened in 1890. I want you to look like Dostoevsky in that room, that you have an appreciation for the sweep of history. You're not going to tell stories that are funny. You're going to tell stories that are based on solid, ancient ideas. And so she just goes, well, if I don't have to work on my accent, I will have time for that. So that's okay. This was, I'm telling you, she was the quintessential no nonsense. Can you imagine you're saying, well, I'm quite skeptical about something. Yes, I suppose you could be if you didn't think about it very much. But it's like, you don't want to step on this. Now, I'll give you another example of this sort of, you're playing a role in any meeting. We were doing some work on behalf of a very big pharmaceutical company. You've heard of them. I don't want to bust their balls and tell you, expose company secrets, but
one of those names.
Yes, one of those names. So what happened was that the salespeople, who are quite gifted and very personable, and they are good in a room, they don't know the chemistry behind. They know the superficial chemistry, but they don't. When you're making a pharmaceutical decision at an insurer or at a big pharmacy, that sort of thing, like CVS or whatever, you need to know the chemistry, and because you're not going to take something that's ineffective or overpriced. You get the idea. These are skeptical audiences, and they need the chemist in the room so that they can answer the relevant questions. And the salesperson, they lamented having to bring these chemists along because half the time the chemists would always say, well, not in every case. You know how chemists are. They're very exacting.
Like any scientist. Well, if there's a 5% chance, but he will die. He will die. 5% chance. When there's a blue moon and Saturn in his Viscort, 5% will die. But of course, so...
You've nailed it exactly. That's the danger.
I was in a pharmaceutical company today.
Okay.
Today. Not so far off from the conversation I have. So it's like that. Okay.
So that's the danger of bringing the chemists. And the salespeople would often, as soon as they started to hear these people go off-road, they would step on them. And that communicated, you can't trust the salesperson because he doesn't want to tell you the truth. All right. So not only that, but then you've got this second problem, which is frequently the chemists are a little bit on the autism spectrum. This is what makes them so brilliant at their jobs. But unfortunately, they're not socially adept. So the clinic that I had done on behalf of these people was, I'm going to try to help you two work together in such a way that it benefits you both, that you're working as a team. And I really wish I could have taken credit for this, but it was only communicated to me after in the room by one of the chemists. I had suggested that every time, if you're a chemist and you're going to go into the room and they're going to ask you to speak, there might be an occasion where you're going to feel uncomfortable and you're going to be a little bit at sea about what you should say and so on. I'm going to give you the first 30 seconds. I'm going to tell you exactly what you're going to say in the first 30 seconds. And then whatever you say afterwards is completely your own domain. But here's what's going to happen. You're so in command of that material. You are so relaxed about knowing what to say. It's like going on a date and having all the right questions to ask. If you go in pre-armed, now you're relaxed. So essentially what I said to have them say was, unfortunately for you, I love what I do so much that I go on, and sometimes you have to tell me to shut up. I wish I weren't like this, but I love chemistry and I love these things, and I'm very, very proud of what we've done. So you have my permission to tell me to stop talking at any point, okay? I just want to go on record with that. Now then, let me tell you about the things I'm going to be speaking about. Bing, bing, bing. Okay. Yeah. Well, one of these chemists said, do you know what happens when you do that for us is that now the salesman has permission to tell me to stop talking, but it's not going to look like he's telling me to shut up because I'm going to tell too much truth. He's doing it on behalf of the client so they're not embarrassed to tell me. And what happens is it looks like the salesman likes me. It looks like the salesman is kind of in love with me, but he's protecting me from myself.
Yeah.
And I thought, I really wish I had thought that far forward. But I know it now is that the goal in getting these two to cooperate is to make it look like they enjoy each other's company, to make it look like they're enjoying the meeting. He's proud to bring the chemist because he's so proud of how good he is at this.
Interesting.
And so that's an example to me of you don't have to be a great storyteller to still tell a story of a sort, which is he's saying, the story I'm going to tell you is, of a person who is so deeply in the weeds on a subject that you need him to be an expert in. He doesn't even know where to begin, or he doesn't know where to stop.
Where to stop? Interesting. But what comes to my mind as you talk both examples in a way, it goes back to earlier in our conversation when you said, if it's your room, right, and you set up the room,
Yeah.
and it's like it goes out like life is but a play, and we're all but actors. In a way, it's like you're saying, if you can define what the play is, and you can define what the roles are, what the roles that you choose to play, then that's already halfway.
Yeah, that's very well.
So there's like very interesting things. Would you say if I'm just starting, I have to first, before I figure out the exact copy and the magic words I want to say, it's like, what is the role I'm going to play and why?
Wow, that's brilliant. Yes,
Well,
exactly.
it's your world. It's not me.
Well,
It's like,
but remember, the whole thing is to create an environment in which the client you're speaking to will see the value in whatever it is you've brought there to help them with. Now, this does not mean necessarily that your job is to emerge having made a sale. The real goal is you are building, strengthening, and supporting a relationship. So sometimes you're going to hear a detail in the meeting that makes it where you begin to understand, oh, this is not the right solution for them. I did not know that. And you have to be honest and sincere and truthful in service of the relationship. You're married to that client. You can't violate their trust. You can't try to get one over on them. They're not a sheep to be fleeced. They are a mate of sorts. Your fates are connected. Your success is my success. You have to believe that in your heart. And this is why it's very important you only work for people who are lovable. You don't want to work for jerks because you'll never be able to be honest with them. And that's bad karma for you.
Yeah.
To be existing in a world where you're deceptive and you're really only thinking of it as a paycheck.
Yeah.
Especially when you're young.
And to be clear, and I have to play the devil's advocate, it's not that you can't be successful differently, right? Because we know, right?
Oh, yeah.
We know. We know. And again, you can be successful differently by doing certain things. But I think what you're kind of saying indirectly, and I think it's worth saying, it's like, but also like, how do you want to live, right? There's an important question here. I think that how do you want to live? Right? Because look, if you want to fleece and fly to the Cayman Islands at some point and like things like that,
People do.
There's people who do it, and it's fine. I mean, that's all right, not fine, but it's like a way to do it.
Yeah.
But I personally think, and this is kind of like an agreement with you, it's like that. If you want to live in a way that's a lot more comfortable, right? In many ways, it's nice when people like you. Doesn't mean you need to be a pushover. It doesn't mean that you're a weird thing, but it's like. But it's like that, and the second thing, it's like that. If you believe in infinite games, right? It's actually useful.
Yes.
To do that.
Okay. Well, you and I are just so much on the same page. That having some experience.
It's the haircut. It's the haircut. It's the haircut.
Right. There's nothing getting in the way of letting the information. So no, we really truly are. We just really understand the lessons we both learned have led to the conclusion that sincere, authentic, old-fashioned, relationship-based business is better for you in the long run and for your soul. And in the end, you need the confidence of your conscience. You need to live with yourself. But I do believe that there is vastly more profit in behaving as a good person. Let me not say that there are not examples of douchebags who are very successful, but let me ask you, how successful would they have been if they had, in addition to their strengths, been sincere and authentic with their customers? Let's look at the number one thing I really provide for people is I'm not trying to turn you into a good person. What I'm trying to do is equip you with all of your strengths to add one more strength. And I'll use the example of very, very beautiful people. They have pretty privilege.
Yes.
A very handsome man walks into a meeting and brother, he's already, instead of starting on the 20-yard line, he's on the 50 right from the time he walks in the meeting.
Yes.
And you know how it is with gorgeous women. It's the same thing. They just automatically have an advantage. They're on the 80, they're on the other end. However, you will notice that very, very beautiful people often have relied too much on their good looks. They don't have that finely tuned sense of humor. They don't have that radar for what other people are thinking. They're not charming.
Because they don't have to be.
Because they
Or they
don't
didn't
have
have,
to
sorry,
be.
they didn't have to be when they were growing up, right?
They didn't
It's like,
develop the muscle
yeah,
of having the
yeah,
other skills.
yeah,
So it's very much like, let's pretend you're a boxer and you have a ferocious right hand.
yes,
You learn to rely on that to such an extent that when somebody figures that one out, you're doomed.
yes,
You cannot, I'm just trying to say in the world, if you are an incredibly hard worker, or you have a knack for systems, or you're a logistics genius,
yeah,
all of these things can lead to tremendous business success. But let's take a surgeon who is gifted. They are an astonishingly adept surgeon. They leave very little wounds. Patients always recover faster and so forth, but they are insufferable with
yeah.
terrible bedside manner. I guarantee you, even with their level of skill, they will be sued constantly.
Yes. No. There's been studies about this, right? It's like again, I don't remember what it is, but I remember reading this many years ago. But it's like that's the biggest correlation to
That
being sued.
It
Right.
is. So I return to my original premise, which was life gets so much easier when
Easier
people
when
like
people
you.
like you.
But let's go back to, I'm just trying to give you an additional skill. And that skill is
Yeah.
what? It's the ability to frame things in a human way so that you can get more enjoyment out of business and your clients will do better because you have a relationship that's based
Yeah.
on humanity and not just the objective things of,
Yeah.
like, it's not transactional as much.
Neil Gaiman.
Oh, yeah.
Did you hear his? He has this beautiful commencement speech he gives somewhere in some art school. Have you heard that?
I don't think so.
So worth listening. Like, of course, he's a storyteller and he tells a wonderful story. And I'm going to do him great injustice because trying to get to the point.
Right.
But he says, like, he talks about like to be a freelancer because he's talking about the beginning of after school, the first jobs artists take. And he says, it's like you need to do good work. You need to do it on time and people have to like you. And if you have 2 out of 3, it's not bad. Because if people like you and you do good work, you don't need to be on time. Like, and something like that. And of course he tells it a lot better than I'm telling you this. But yeah, too bad. It's so bad.
Is it there? Forgive me because I'm going to tell a story that I tell so frequently that,
Yes,
you know,
please.
but this to me is so instructive. So I was in a restaurant and I was overhearing 2 women talking about, one woman was talking about her ex-husband and she was complaining about him saying that he was a dog and that all men are dogs. And in the instant that I heard that, I thought, boy, being compared to a dog is not necessarily a bad thing. Dogs are great. Everybody loves dogs. But then I started to say to myself, oh, objectively, dogs do have drawbacks. I mean, you have to constantly walk them. You have to pick up their poop. You know, they've shed on everything. The number of times I've stood there with, a piece of tape, getting my dog's hair off my suit, and they get sick and they cost a fortune at the vet. If you travel, you have to board them or you have to let somebody into your house, which I don't like to do. And then God help you if they bite someone. That's real trouble. That's legit. All the suffering and all the sacrifice and all of this that people pour into their dogs. And then what happens? They die. And on that day, I promise you, it will be one of the most heartbreaking days of your life. So my question is, why do people bother? Why do they love dogs so much? And the answer is because dogs love you first, because they don't judge you and they're always happy to see you. And if anybody ever threatens you, many dogs will not think for a second about their own safety. They will run headlong at the danger. And my favorite thing about dogs is they don't look at you and wonder if they could have done better. That to me is a really good example of if you serve a client and you don't wait for them to prove they're worthy of your affection, you're the first mover. You just love them first. They will instinctively want to return that affection.
Yes.
90% of the time.
And for people who are afraid to do that, it says, like, remember that it's better to have loved and lost than not to have loved at all.
It is. Did you ever see that Ethan Hawke thing where he was being asked by a woman it was some premiere of some movie and they're on the red carpet and she says to him, she's got this wonderful conversation going with him and she's very flirty and she says, is it better to have loved and lost or never to have loved at all? And he says, oh, the one who, even when you get your heart broken, the one who loves deepest is the one who wins. And she says, what? And he says, because you're experiencing life. You are being sincere and truthful and unabashed and unafraid. You
Yeah.
are simply expressing yourself. And in the end, that's a better life. And she's looking at him like he is the revealed word of the Lord.
But he's right.
He's
He's
totally
right.
right.
He's right.
It's part of the human experience.
And I would say in the business context, as long as you don't risk your brand, as long as you don't risk your family welfare, no, you don't bet the whole company on a relationship that's not proven. But you
Yes,
can
yes,
love,
yes,
but
yes.
you can love your clients, and the only thing that might get hurt is your feelings, right?
Even then,
It's
you can,
worthwhile.
even then you can film a doll taking your zipper down. And
Yes.
like you just roll with it, brother. Just, most clients don't set out to be jerks, but I have been a jerk enough times to realize it happens to even the best intentions. Oh my Lord, guy, the things I've said to people, Lord, I was so mean to an ad agency person when I was at TiVo, and this guy had no business taking that kind of crap from me. But years later, I managed to apologize to him. And he said, no need to apologize. And I go, no, I definitely need to apologize. And he said, you think you were the worst I ever got? And then I realized, wow, this guy's a pro.
Oh,
He's
wow.
a professional because he just let it. And I'd said just awful, mean things. And, so we're all subject to it. So therefore, we have to grant other people grace as well. Clients,
Yeah.
especially, you have to grant them the grace of saying, I'm not going to let this make me think they're a bad person. My guess is they're under a lot of strain and they're leaking it on me because they can't
Yeah.
do it to their bosses. So you owe them all the more the opportunity to understand them and try to say, listen, my guess is the only reason you've said that is because you must be under crushing pressure right now. Help me help you.
Yeah.
Tell me what we need to fix. Let me be the analgesic that gets you over your headache. Instead of going, asshole, you just go, I'm going to guess that the reason you've said it that way is because you're under a strain right now. And because I've done that too. Imagine if somebody gives you permission to recover yourself and go, I'm sorry. You're right. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that you let me off the hook there. That's what the foundation of great relationships is, that you kind of overlook these things.
I mean, and we do it in good personal relationships, right? Because we feel that was
Right.
And I have again, it's not be that great of a story because I need to erase a lot of identifying factors.
Yes.
But this is actually something from very recent this week. A colleague of mine was in front of, let's say, a Fortune 50 kind of situation where the other side was basically multi-million dollar deal barraging and threatening and all those things. And he had a very human conversation, very similar to what you're saying. And the other guy started crying. And the other guy started crying because he was under so much pressure.
Yeah.
He was under so much pressure.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, and like on one hand, he was like endangering them in the situation and so on. But the humanity of it is like he was under sincerely a lot of pressure.
Can I throw out to your people, your audience, something that I heard that was absolutely brilliant, which is I had a boss. He was so good. He was such a mensch. He said to a client once, he goes, look, I know why you're acting this way. It's because you care. And here's the problem with people who care. They internalize it. They want so badly to do a good job that they let the pressure get to them. It's, when you really, this is why people kill themselves after a relationship ends, because they care too much. Yeah. So by saying such a thing, what he'd actually done is given this client permission to take a deep breath and go, oh, he's not upset with me. He gets me. He understands why I lashed out like that. And I thought, oh, that was good. That the only reason you're acting like this is because you care. And if you didn't care, you wouldn't give a crap you wouldn't let it bother you. You would just go, look, it's a paycheck. I'll do that, whatever.
Interesting. And I have one more question for you. From your multi-decade experience of doing this, okay? Who in your mind stands out, or maybe more than one person, as most effective business-wise, and why?
Well, effective can have different interpretations, but let's look at it as they get to the end of their career and they have absolutely nothing to apologize for. I'll give you a great example of it. This guy, a sort of earmark of the way that he operated in the world was that he was leading a meeting at which it wasn't a brainstorming, but he was getting everybody's opinion about various initiatives, and he was asking for initiatives to be presented. So he's very much in charge of the meeting. But instead of him acting like the Lord on high, what he did was he went around the table and he introduced everybody. We all knew each other, but he introduced us by saying, "This is why I wanted Janet here. Ken, I'm relying on you today because I believe that you understand the numbers better than anybody. I will call on you in this meeting occasionally to give me your input about whether, how that fits into the profit structure and so on." Now, what happened was he'd actually honored everybody in the room by saying, this is not a hierarchy in this room. What this is it is a team of rivals of a sort. We're expected to arrive at our best decisions. You don't have to dominate the room to contribute. I'm not expecting you to compete today. We're all on the same side. That's a typical move of this guy, was to understand deeply how the dynamics of a room like that work, that you can lower people's IQ if you set them off in competition with one another. Because instead of thinking about what we're here to think about, 15% of their brain is occupied by what the pecking order is at the table. So you can see how shrewd he was about that. Well, he was part of the team. He was the leader of the team that launched the Lexus brand in the United States in the late 80s. And eventually, he was a very sincere, good businessman, very principled, protective of his people. He was a terrific guy. And over time, later on, say probably about 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, they fired him. Not the client. The Toyota people loved him.
Yeah.
The Lexus people loved him. But he'd gotten sideways with somebody's nephew or something. And so I'm thinking, well, that's too bad. Oh, what a shame. They've dishonored him and so forth. Okay, then I had the opportunity to go to Japan with this guy. The Lexus people had invited him to come back and contribute to some this or that. Yeah. And I didn't realize this guy was a demigod in Japan. Like whatever they thought of him in the States, you should have seen the way he got treated over there. People knew him. I mean, like strangers knew him. He would walk into a room and all of a sudden you could see, like, oh, it's Scott Gilbert. And it's funny. It's like you can't sell 5 records in the United States, but you're gigantic in Brazil.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I did. And then I realized those are the relationship people. The Japanese are long relationship people, like 20, 30 years of cultivate relationships, because Toyota in particular was a really, really good example of, they wanted their suppliers to be on board. Like they really wanted them to absorb the quality numbers. And they understood these numbers are not easy to achieve. These very strict tolerances are difficult and expensive to achieve. Therefore, we will never cheat you and we won't nickel and dime you so that you violate these things and then try to persuade us that your numbers are, no. Yeah. We're in this together. You're a supplier. We're the buyer. We're going to be in this for 30 years together. Yeah. And in doing so, everybody understood that if Toyota was your client, they had to be your number one client because they would never abandon you and you could never violate their trust. You're giving up the goose that laid the golden egg if you violated their trust. These are all stories we tell each other about, that our relationship matters. And oh my Lord, the meetings, the Japanese were very, very good at establishing context. I was in a meeting at which the Japanese executive he was explaining how important the project was to us and how he expected us to behave towards the brand. This is how he began it. He said, "I love my daughter very much. I did not realize until I became the father of a daughter how significant she was to me, how my life did not mean anything except as the provider and protector of that young baby. And as she has grown up, that has only become more important to me, that everything I do now, it goes through the filter first of how will this affect my daughter." And one day she got a fiance and the young man came to see me. And I will now tell you what I told him, which is the most important thing to me in the world is my daughter. And I will be turning her over to you. I cannot be there at every hour of the day and night to soothe her tears. I cannot be there to support her and encourage her as she grows into the woman that she will one day be. I cannot be the one to give her children. That will be your job. My grandchildren will be half you. Do you know how important this is to me that you live up to my hopes for her? And the young man, God bless him, said, yes, I understand. And I think he did understand. I turn to you now as representatives of this advertising agency. I do not feel exactly that way about this car, but it is a close second. So I am praying that you will understand how important this is to me. and how I must ask that I cannot be there to do what you do, but I rely on you to understand that. So he leaves the meeting and we all look at each other and go, well, I
shit,
guess,
right?
I guess this became a very important part of my life just now. You see the story that he tells.
So I'm having goosebumps as you're telling it right now. And I'm imagining a collection of Japanese swords in the background that is saying it, right? Just to emphasis the point.
You're not off. He was not threatening us in any way.
No, it wasn't threatening.
What he was saying was,
yeah,
this is of such importance to me that I need to tell you how important it is so that you'll understand that when I react to you in the future, you'll understand why I'm reacting the way I am. So any presentation we made to this man, the number one thing it had as its objective was to honor the product. Now, that didn't always mean that it was a long list of features. On the contrary, sometimes it was a story about the beauty of the product, and it was told beautifully. Or it was a story about what a good job it does for the people that buy it, because in the end, they're the grandchildren. So he got it, I think, before we got it. His lecture was very instructive to me about the power of storytelling. He was telling us a story about his daughter. And in doing so, we got all the meta messages about how to conduct ourselves in all future meetings. Imagine how powerful that is for somebody who is looking for funding. When you're in a meeting looking for funding, you don't want to go into that meeting hat in hand begging for money. That's not the dynamic you want at all. What you want is you're looking for a partner who understands, and you can do yourself a real favor by having the confidence, weirdly, to say no, even when you desperately need that money.
So, and there's a lot to there. So, how do we put it all together? Because we kind of talked about the theories and the role setting and deciding, what character you play and like, where are you on the stage?
Yeah.
Right. And things like that. So it's like, and again, like beyond this, any specific techniques, for somebody who's just like saying, I understand, but how do I get my head around this just to start? So besides signing up for your course, which I already recommended in the beginning,
I do believe in it. I think it's quite a good product. I think it's underpriced.
I think, and it's Neal is not paying me.
Yeah, no.
Promise I'm not getting a cut. I'm not getting a cut. I stand behind this, but it's like,
yeah, where do we begin?
So people get an idea of what's possible.
Yes.
When you start structuring things in your head and even in your belief system, right? So it's they listen to the podcast, they went to sleep, woke up in the morning, and they're making their, 3 bullet, 5 bullet, we said no bullet points, but like action item.
No, you're exactly
what
right.
should we do?
These are the things we should write down. Okay, so I want to quote Ernest Hemingway, who said, "The first draft of anything is shit." People do not understand that when they're preparing for a business meeting or they're looking to get investors and they have to persuade someone, they're trying to sell them something. They do not understand that your first impulse, your first draft about what you're going to say is not what your end state should be. That is the beginning of the process of getting ready for a meeting, of getting ready to tell a story. It's going to take you many drafts and many rehearsals to live up to your own potential, to put on a good show, make them invest them emotionally in what you're there to sell. It takes me, when I do a video for like social media, it will usually take me about 31, 35 takes to get it the way I want it. And people are astonished to realize that's how many false starts I did. That's how many times I had to do it over and over again. There's a beauty to dedicating yourself to rehearsal in a way where you enjoy the rehearsal. You perversely enjoy the false start. Like if I did it too well at 15, I'd be a little suspicious that I was being overly optimistic, that it wasn't as good as it could have been. But what happens is when you do it that many times, it is so internalized by the time you get to the end that you've really got it. Like you could turn it, you could do one take and get it again. Like that's the beauty of rehearsal. That's the beauty of sanding off and tweaking and playing with the word order and watching it back and going, that could be better. I could do that better. Oh, I should have added this.
With a smile.
Yes.
With a smile.
Yes. Well, exactly.
You're smiling because
you're smiling going, it's going to be that much better. It's very much like on the Toyota assembly line when they pull the line because they're seeing a repeat problem. Do you think they're upset? No, they're happy. Why would they be happy? Because now they know the product is that much more perfect. It's that closer to flawless. It's the same thing when you enjoy going, I'll do it one more time. It's like a great actor, great actress.
Yeah.
They don't mind doing another take. Well, once you're past a certain point, it's like, bro, I don't know what you want. But here's the thing is when we were talking about starting place is to understand that if you really want to get better at storytelling, you have to practice. You have to, work it out and tweak it and play with it and enjoy the process. And I want to do something else. I want to remind everybody of a technology that they all have, but that they don't use enough, which is film yourself. Film yourself telling a story, making a presentation, whatever you're going to say at a wedding, you're going to make a toast, film yourself. And I know you're going to cringe because we all do. I understand. But the day you can get over cringing, the day you stop being embarrassed watching yourself is the day you turn pro, because that's the day when you enjoy the process of getting better. And all of the great athletes, they have a kind of psychotic enjoyment for the process. They like practice. You think it's a chore. You think you have to go to practice. Brother, they can't stop thinking about it. So the greats, the really skilled ones go, I'm going to enjoy the process of watching myself get better at this. And now you're going to have an advantage over all of your competitors, which is they're not going to practice enough. They're not going to rehearse it enough. They're going to have a bunch of false starts in the meeting. They're not going to look like one of the great things about the series Mad Men was Don Draper would stand up in front of a room and he would paint a picture, he would weave a tapestry, and everybody goes, wow, he's so good. Bro, you think he didn't learn those lines like a mofo? They can't do 16 takes on the set of Mad Men. That guy, John Hamm, had to have that speech down, which meant there were no false starts. There wasn't a wrong word in the whole thing. The emotional tenor and so forth. Well, yeah, because he practiced the crap out of it. If you do that, you're going to look magical.
Yeah.
By comparison to everybody else, they're going to go, how you do anything is how you do everything. And every time Haggai walks into this room, he never says, he looks me in the eye because he is so convinced he knows what he's going to say. Imagine being that slightly on the spectrum chemist from from Amgen or from AstraZeneca and knowing what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Like you walk into that room differently. You're a transformed person. That's the starting point, is committing to the practice and to the process and going, I'm going to get better at this. I'm going to make this a weapon instead of it being a flaw, instead of me being
realize you're going to suck, do it anyway.
Yes.
Enjoy the process.
Here's how we're going to get you past the do it anyway, because you're going to have an advantage your competitors don't have. You're going to give yourself the gift of doing what they won't do. The day that you go, yeah, I'm cringing now, but here's what's happening. All my competitors, they're cringing too, and they're giving up. That's my advantage. Now I'm going to get really good. Now, here's the thing, though. Once when I was in Saatchi, we started putting on these circus acts. I mean, we were a show. And we didn't lament having to be up late while we were dressing the room or making it smell like vanilla. You think we were upset about the time we were putting on? We were laughing the whole time because we were saying to ourselves, they're not going to do it. People are going to be competing against us. And now they're screwed because they're not enjoying doing what we're doing. Okay, but then what happens? When at Saatchi, we were competing against another creative group. They got wise. And now it was an arms race. And then everybody's putting on a good show. And that's how I eventually became the worldwide head of creative education, was to create that arms race in the organization. But so let's move to another thing that people can do. Okay, where do you start? The first thing is you have to get yourself a notebook and you have to start writing down interesting things that have happened to you. So in your day, there must have been some standout moment. Like what happened to you that was interesting today? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a big thing. It's, I convinced myself to go to the gym. What was the thought process that got me out of the house? And you may have had this experience where once you have left the house, it's already a fait accompli. Yeah. It's like walking out the door was enough to get you through
True story this morning.
Was it?
True story this morning.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. Just writing that down, that that happened to me today. Now you've got a story that will find a use somewhere down the road, but you got to write them down and you have to have a list of these things. Yeah. If you keep a notebook, then what's going to happen is, like any technology that's lying around, you're going to find a use for it. It's like, that's the problem with weapons. If you build a lot of weapons, you're going to find a way to use them.
Yes.
The people at General Dynamics, nobody wants world peace less than somebody who has built a weapon system. They want to find out how it works. How does it do? I'm slandering General Dynamics. I shouldn't call attention to them. They actually make very fine submarines, as it turns out. But I don't mean to say that these people
No,
are
it's
bad.
fair enough.
I'm just saying,
There is a there's a professional interest in knowing how well did you execute your craft. Period.
yeah.
Yes.
And so if you just adopt these momentum-based things, then what will happen is the goal is to get to enjoy the process.
Yes.
Going, just buying that donut. I had a very interesting exchange with the woman behind the counter. Let me write that down. You know, I want to even, I had an experience at a Residence Inn in Plano, Texas, that was life-changing for me, because the woman behind the counter, the Residence Inn is not the Marriott. The Marriott is very much nicer, but they were overbooked. So they sent me down the road to their sister hotel, which was not at all as nice. But the woman behind the counter, Caprice, was so cool and so glad to see me and took so much pleasure in my enjoyment that I refused to stay at the Marriott down the street. Now I wanted to go to the grade down. It's like going to a dive bar and having more fun than going to a Michelin-starred restaurant, because the experience turns out to be the thing. Well, for the people that listen to you, it's the same thing. The story is an experience. It's part of the experience, but you can dress it and you can make it fun. You can prove to them that you've gone the extra effort out of an affection for them. You wanted it to be more fun. Imagine how much fun it is if you're a woman on a date and all of a sudden the date is filled with unexpected little things, like, we're going to do this, but first we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. And if there's some kind of artifact, some kind of little tchotchke that they got at the experience, then so much the better. And I want to point out a thing that I saw. There's a guy who specializes in helping women get the men they want. Okay. This guy's name is Matthew Hussey. He's this handsome, tall, he's got a beautiful head of hair. He's this Englishman. And at first I'm going, hate him especially, hate him more. He's got a very successful book called Get the Guy You Want, something like that. And I'm thinking, please, only to discover, oh my Lord, he knows what he's talking about. He's really good. He fills ballrooms of women that have paid $700 to hear him speak. Now, here's a really good example of the sort of thing he would tell them. A woman gets up and she says, I'm not a prude, but when a guy on the first date wants to kind of go all the way, and when I turn them down, I'm scared they're not going to want to come back. But that's not my style. That's not my speed. And Hussey goes, well, first of all, let me congratulate you on knowing who you are and what you want. But I appreciate the dilemma that you're facing, because there are a lot of women out there who'll give it up on the first date, and you don't want to be perceived as prudish. How about this? I want you to imagine this scenario. You've had a really nice date and the guy's great. You really like him. And he walks you home from the date and you're on the doorstep of your apartment. And he says, so maybe I should come up and we'll have a drink. Code words, of course. And you are now confronted by the dilemma of what you should do. Now, I want you to imagine you say this. Wow, a part of me would love to, but it's kind of not my speed. I like to take things a little bit slower, if you don't mind. If you want to go out again, man, count me in. I had a great time and you're a great guy. But you have to promise me if we go out again, you won't wear that shirt, because that's an unfair advantage. Now, Matthew says to the audience, every time he sees that shirt in his closet, what is he thinking about? He's thinking about you, baby. And what is he thinking? Does he think, that awful woman? Or does he think she finds me kind of hot? And do you think he's going to invite her out again? Oh, of course he is. Of course he is.
It's non-rejection, rejection. It's non-rejection, rejection. It's beautiful. I wish I was that smooth.
I know, me too.
I need practice. It's like, it's non-rejection, rejection.
He has crafted a way to make her absolutely top of mind every time he goes to his closet. I can almost guarantee you that that shirt is going to have more room around it than any other shirt in the closet. It's going to sit there in the front. It's going to have 3.5 inches on either side of it. And every time he looks at it, he feels good about himself. And I can tell you that if I was that guy and I had that shirt, 100% I would wear it on the next date.
Yeah.
And she would say, I thought I told you not to wear that shirt. He goes, and I would say in response, I need every advantage I can get. And it has created an entire script for the next time they get together.
Yeah.
He's
and the setting. And the setting. And the setting.
And the setting. Right.
And
so that to me, this guy, Matthew Hussey, whom I'm plugging for no money, I don't want him to make the millions he makes, but he deserves it. What he's done is he has understood that a conversation is an opportunity to tell a story. And a story doesn't have to have a kind of beginning, middle, and an end. What it has to do is it has to paint you a picture of the future. It has to create a moral of the story. And actually, the example I gave actually really is the beginning, middle, and an end. Because he has suggested the beginning, which is, is this the end or is this the beginning? Yeah. And she said, well, a part of me would love to. Even the way he says that, a part of me would love to. So that if it ever did happen, it would rock your world. Okay. So she would be an enthusiastic participant. However, she doesn't give it away to just any Tom, Dick, and Harry, which is a good thing, which is, okay, that paints a picture of I could see where this would be a long-term thing because she's selective. You have to try out for this team. You can't, you don't get automatic access to the luxury boxes. And that point, now she's raised the game to a completely different, you're playing a different game now. The game we're playing is, would you like to, do you want to see this develop into something? Yeah. Brilliant.
So we said about the importance of realizing things are not that good with beginners and just do it anyway because it's an advantage and get better by practice. We said about collect stories, and we taught the importance of telling stories about the future. This is the thing. Is there something else that you think is important, or is this a good stuff?
I want to return to the idea that practice is the answer, that treating it like an art form, like ice skating. You can do anything as an art form if you put enough love and devotion into it. There was an Olympic performance at the Winter Olympics. Alyssa Liu, who was the American figure skater, who won the gold. It took you about 25 seconds to realize she was going to win that medal because she was not playing the same game as everybody else. She was out there for the love of it. She was sharing the performance. She was not competing. She was sharing her love of the artistry of the sport. She was enjoying what was otherwise would be debilitating pressure. She was rejecting the idea of pressure and instead putting on a performance. Can you imagine what it would have been to be Pavarotti and being able to sing the Turandot opera, and he's singing, and he knows this last note is coming. Yeah. Can you imagine the pleasure he has bringing this to the audience and going, I have strained my life to achieve this, and I want to share it with you. And the beauty of practice is the better you get, the better you want to get. And you start to see, if you go to the gym and it's like, oh, I've got a tricep. Holy crap. And all of a sudden you're going to the gym banging out dips because you want it to emerge. But you got to get to the gym long enough to start to see that outline.
To get some payout so you can get addicted to the payout. You need some payout so you can get addicted to the payout.
There you go. That's that. If I could leave anything with your people, it would be that there's an art form that will benefit you the same way that good looks benefits you. Yeah. The same way that being really good at operations or having an expertise in software and so forth benefits you. It's an additional skill that costs time and energy, but to add this skill makes you so much more competitive than your competition and brings more value to you in your organization, so that just like the chemist who is now loved and respected by the salesperson, now this organization is firing at really high horsepower because the salesman cannot wait to get his chemist in front of those people. And you can see the benefit. Same is true of stock brokerages. They'll have analysts, and they're sometimes reluctant to bring the analysts in the room for the same reason that they always are depreciating or something around. You get the idea. So you want to stick with it long enough to show results so that you get addicted to the results, and then you're really off to the race.
So I think this is a good point to start wrapping things up, because like kind of we got to an end, but at the beginning. I have a request, and feel free to say no. It's like, again, it's not that big of a request, but things that I love the Polish bartender story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And if you don't mind telling that, I think it would be an amazing way to end the podcast.
I think that's a completely apt story to tell, because it took me thousands of presentations to get to a place where I felt like that was my great skill. At the beginning, I was terrible. And when I was an account executive, this awful young junior account executive, my bosses made the mistake of putting me up in front of a room of 250 people. And I botched it. It was if you've ever had the experience of being inside your head and watching yourself wreck, that was me. And so I was absolutely certain that I did not have a job in the morning. I went to bed convinced they were going to fire me in the morning. Well, so there I was at the Drake Hotel in Chicago, and I could not sleep for obvious reasons. So I said at 2 a.m, I decided I would go down into the hotel bar in the hope that they were still open to drink myself into an oblivion. I go down there, and this was back when you could smoke in bars. I go down there, and the lights are on in the bar, and there is a woman behind the bar smoking a cigarette. And so I go up to her. She's this tough Polish woman. You get the feeling like her fillings in her teeth were made of steel. And so I go up and I order a gin and tonic, and she takes a big drag off her cigarette. And she goes, "Yes, you could have something dull and unremarkable, or you could have the best vodka in the world. It's up to you." And so I go, "Well, I'll have the best vodka in the world." And then she takes another drag over her cigarette and goes, "Do you mind it's slightly illegal?" And I go, "What?" And she says, "The vodka has a blade of grass in it from Poland, and this makes the customs people wet the beds." And I go, "Oh, well, no, that's no problem." And she goes, "Oh, good." So she pulls out 2 glasses and pours me one and pours herself one. And I'm not talking about like a single, okay? She pours us both a double. And while she's pouring, I notice there is this phrase tattooed into her hand. It looks like something you'd give yourself in prison. And I said, what is that tattoo? And she goes, 20,000 years ago, odds are good you get killed by a bear or a tiger, or you fall through the ice, And our ancestors, the reason we survive is because we learned to freak out about danger, because everything was trying to kill you. But now we have a bad business meeting, we freak out, but it's not going to kill you, okay? So it says, "Nyamate grisa, there is no tiger." I'm looking at her like, "Are you psychic?" And I said to her, "I think you are the greatest bartender in the city of Chicago." And she goes, "You may applaud." And so it turns out she was not an employee of the hotel. She was a guest like me. She'd come down. All the booze was locked up. The one thing was there was bootleg Zubrovka, and it was below the bar because you couldn't put it on display because it was illegal. So that's what she found, and that's what she served. And ever since then, I have always asked for that booze. But her lesson stayed with me. There is no tiger. Neal, relax, go to sleep. Whether they fire you or not, nobody dies. Okay. And so that was the origin of my presentation career.
It sounds to me, thank you very much. And it sounds to me like the making of a Netflix series. It's like the opening scene. It feels like the opening scene of a Netflix series. Yeah. There is no tiger.
Yeah.
It's like that. So if you want to negotiate rights on the story, this is the time to do it. Amazing. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Haggai.
So people who want to find you, where should they look?
So I'm pretty easy, because if they just spell my name right, I'm really easy to find. Neal, Neal. Foard is spelled Foard. That's what makes it unique. So if they look me up on anything, Google, what have you, they'll find me on Instagram and YouTube and so forth. I would like them to encourage them to go to storyfire.net, because you can get some samples. If you explore the course, you can find samples of what it's like on the course. And as I said before, I'm a very big believer in it. I believe in it. I believe it's underpriced. It seems like a lot, but given what it is that it leads you towards, if you can adopt this as a skill, if you can get only 20% better, that pays for itself pretty quickly. And an additional sale, or a better relationship with your client, or, somebody who's more impressed with you on a date. It's worth it. So www.storyfire.net. And thank you for letting me pitch it.
Because hey, it's a love letter to my audience because
Thank
I think it's worthwhile. So here we completed the circle. We didn't plan it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And keep making the world a little more beautiful with the stories.
Thank you, Haggai.
Thank
You're
you.
very good at this. You
Oh,
are
I'll
very
take
good
it.
at it. Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Right.
Amazing. Cheers.
Cheers.
It's a wrap. This Haggai podcast episode ends here, but you don't. Now, is it crazy to think that you know somebody who'd love this episode? Share it with them, and they'll love you for it.